Greetings again, students. I hope you're doing well wherever you now find you. And I want to end our study of the Upanishads with the Mandukya Upanishad, which is thought to summarize the whole of the Upanishads and to provide a bridge into the thought of later Vedantic philosophy. Its theme is the symbol Om, which is said to somehow represent Brahman most clearly. It's sort of the clearest finger pointing at the moon. And it involves the three classic states of awareness of the Atman, of waking, dreaming sleep, dreamless sleep, and then passes into the fourth, the Turiya, the fourth state of condition, or condition. For Brahman, it is said, is four-footed. It's very short, so just follow along with me as I read it aloud for you, and then we'll sort of go through it a little at a time, explaining these basic ideas. Om. This eternal word is all. What was, what is, and what shall be, and what beyond is in eternity. All is Om. Brahman is all, and Atman is Brahman. Atman, the self, has four conditions. The first condition is the waking life of outward-moving consciousness, enjoying the seven outer gross elements. The second condition is the dreaming life of inner-moving consciousness, enjoying the seven subtle inner elements in its own light and solitude. The third condition is the sleeping life of silent consciousness, when a person has no desires and beholds no dreams. That condition of deep sleep is one of oneness, a mass of silent consciousness made of peace and enjoying peace. This silent consciousness is all-powerful, all-knowing, the inner ruler, the source of all, the beginning and end of all beings. The fourth condition is Atman in his own pure state, the awakened life of supreme consciousness. It is neither outer nor inner consciousness, neither semi-consciousness nor sleeping consciousness, neither consciousness nor unconsciousness. He is Atman, the Spirit himself, that cannot be seen or touched, that is above all distinction, beyond thought, and ineffable. And the union with him is the supreme proof of his reality. He is the end of evolution and non-duality. He is peace and love. This Atman is the eternal word Om. Its three sounds, A, U, are the first three states of consciousness. And these three states are the three sounds. The first sound, A, is the first state of waking consciousness, common to all men. It is found in the words apti, attaining, and adamatvam, being first. Who knows this, attains in truth all his desires, and in all things becomes first. The second sound, U, is the second state of dreaming consciousness. It is found in the words utkarsha, uprising, and umayatvam, bothness. Who knows this raises the tradition of knowledge and attains equilibrium. In his family is never born anyone who knows not Brahman. The third sound, is the third state of sleeping consciousness. It is found in the words miti, measure, and in the root mi, to end, that gives apiti, final end. Who knows this measures all with his mind and attains the final end. The word Om, as one sound, is the fourth state of supreme consciousness. It is beyond the senses and is the end of evolution. It is non-duality and love. He goes with his self to the supreme self. Who knows this? Who knows this? So it says, Om. This eternal word is all. What was, what is, and what shall be, and what is beyond is in eternity. All is Om. In this way of thinking, there are two realms that are really identical, though they don't seem to be. One realm seems otherworldly when you talk about it, but really it's just an aspect of this world that we are not seeing clearly. Just like the pre-op child who cannot see the water in the squat glass has the same volume of water as the tall, thin glass, or just like with the rope and the snake, or the leaf and the spider. There is, first, the sphere of visible things, the things we experience through our senses, which is always changing and becoming in the realm of time, and then there is a timeless, transcendent, eternal sphere to which space-time thinking is irrelevant, which seems beyond the first and somehow contrary to it, and yet is identical with it. The text then says, Brahman is all, and Atman is Brahman. Remember, this is a philosophy of non-dualism, which, remember, is not a monism, but Advaita, the not-two philosophy. And this Advaita philosophy claims that the fantastic variety and multiplicity of the phenomenal universe, the macrocosm, is essentially identical with the microcosmic self. Behind the multiplicity, Atman is identical with Brahman. The macro and the micro, Brahman and Atman, the universe and the self, are really one and the same. The text then says, Atman, the self, has 4 conditions. In the Upanishads, we're taking a voyage inward to explore the 4 states of the microcosm in relation to the macrocosm. And to go inward means surprisingly to go outward. The only real way to go out into the universe is to go out into yourself, into yourself. And the Atman, in fact, passes through 4 conditions, which makes its true reality visible. These 4 levels are levels of experiencing the self. Think of what we studied about Piaget, and then the material on the transrational and the transpersonal, to sort of bring this into focus. It seems like another world to you before you see it. And then when you do see it, it's like, how could I not have known it was there all along? So otherworldly just means things that will become this worldly as I develop the requisite cognitive tools that I am avidya, simply not seeing, because my mind hasn't developed enough to see it. And to the degree you experience the true self, to that degree you experience reality. The text then says the first condition is the waking life of outward moving consciousness, enjoying the 7 outer gross elements. So the first condition is the one we're in now, right? Of outward moving awareness, living and moving in the world of the senses, what most people call the real world. But as we're thinking about it in this text, to these philosophers, this so-called waking life is really an illusion, a kind of dream, right? And we're sort of going to move up through these conditions until we finally wake up. Here Atman is dreaming, but sort of getting less fooled by the dream. Normal waking life is the deepest level of illusion. And then dream sleep, ironically, brings you closer to reality because it's a clearer finger pointing at the moon of the truth. And then deep sleep with no dreams is closest to reality of all because it's the clearest finger pointing at the moon of what it means to experience the 4th level where the Atman is awake. And it's interesting to think about why deep sleep is closer to reality than normal waking life, and we'll get to that in a minute. Now remember, in this philosophy, suffering is thought to be caused by bondage to limited ways of experiencing the true self. So moving up this way, we have degrees of wakefulness, which corresponds to waking up into different degrees of reality. Again, you don't go anywhere. It's just like moving from the different levels of cognition in Piaget's transformation, only here we're entering the transpersonal realm. This is not meant as a theory, remember. It's not meant as a theoretical model, but instead it's a finger pointing at the moon. It's not something for you to believe, but something you must become. It's not something you want to know, because as long as you know it, you're not it, because it's still an object to you. It's a finger pointing at the moon. And what we call waking life is a strange dream. Have you ever felt like that? That even waking life is a dream state, right? Well, why is waking life said to be like a dream? Can you guess? If you're raising your hand, I can't see it, sadly. Because this strange dream of waking life has me in my bedroom office and you wherever you are watching this because there's a worldwide plague. But think about it. In a dream, you don't know your real self. and you contemplate the unreal world of your dreams as if it were real. In a dream, we mistake copies of things for real things. And we're in a private world of our own. Right? So right now, looking around under this model, what I'm really seeing is the elements of a fantastic universal dream, which we call normal waking life. In a dream, we mistake copies of things for real things. We see the fanciful delusion of multiplicity and separateness instead of unity. It arises like a dream does, solely from within ourselves. It has no existence apart from the dreamer. And as a dream dissipates when you wake up, the waking dream fades away upon true awakening. And the proof of this, they say, is that others have woken up, and you can wake up too. Have you ever had a dream where you wake up from a dream inside your dream? In other words, in your dream you wake up, but then you wake up again and realize you had dreamed you woke up. But what if you were to wake up from that? When one of my daughters was little, she was afraid of dreaming. And I would say to her, dreaming is just an illusion. It's not real life. And because she was a very smart girl, she would ask me, how do you know that, Daddy? She wasn't just going to take my word for it. I tried to raise my kids right. I tried to raise them so they would ask me for reasons, right? Yeah. And my answer to her was, right, how do you know that dream is not real life? And I said, well, because you can wake up. Because you can wake up, right? So how do you know that this is an illusion? Well, the philosophers of the Upanishads say, because you can wake up, right? The only proof possible of Atman, of waking up into reality, is to actually experience waking up. So go in Upanishad, sit down near someone who knows how to help you wake up, because there's no other way. And I myself have never woken up like that into the realization of Brahman. So darn if I know if it's real or not. But I hope it is. I think if there's any philosophy I hope most would be true, it would be the philosophy of Advaita Vedanta. Because it would mean that all the sorrow, all the tears, all the horror, all the terror wasn't real. And that at the heart of everything was bliss and joy and true thought. Right? Wouldn't that be a beautiful thing? But I've never experienced that. So I always tell my students at this point in my course, now if you ever wake up, if you ever find out this is real, send me a postcard to let me know it's really happened to you. Or maybe even come by and give me some help. Because if you ever wake up into Atman realization, I'll come Upanishad and sit down right next to you so you can help me wake up too. Deal? Now, the text continues and says the second condition is the dreaming life of inner moving consciousness, enjoying the 7 subtle inner elements in its own light and solitude. Now, the world of dreams is like a finger pointing at the moon, right? In dreams, the Upanishad said, the Atman is thought to move between waking and dream sleep like a fish between 2 banks of a river, swim without touching them. And in dream sleep, the second condition or state of awareness, we're closer to what reality is like, because in dreams, we seem to create our own worlds in dreaming. Consider what it says in the Brihad Upanishad. Take out your book and look on page 129 with me. But come, I will in truth teach you about Brahman. And he arose and took him by the hand, and the 2 walking together came upon a man who was in deep sleep. They called him by different names, such as, you great man dressed in whiteness, you Sama the king. But he didn't respond. Then Ajatasattu shook him with his hand, and he woke up. When this man was asleep, said Ajatasattu. Where had his consciousness gone? And when he awoke, where from did it return? But Gargya did not know. Then spoke Ajatasattu. Ajatasattu. When a man is asleep, his soul takes the consciousness of the several senses and goes to rest with them on the Supreme Spirit, who is in the human heart. When all the senses are quiet, the man is said to be asleep. Then the soul holds the power of life, and they rest in quietness. When the soul is in the land of dreams, then all of the worlds belong to the soul. A man can be a great king or a great priest and live in conditions high or low. And even as a great king of this earth takes his attendants with him and goes about his dominions wherever he desires, so the soul of man takes the powers of life with him and wanders in the land of dreams according to his desires. Now turn to page 134. In the section called Dreams. When the spirit of man retires to rest, he takes with him material from this all-containing world, and he creates and destroys in his own glory and radiance. Then the spirit of man shines in his own light. In that land there are no chariots, no teams of horses, nor roads. But he creates his own chariots, his teams of horses and roads. There are no joys in that region, and no pleasures nor delights. But in his dreams he creates his own joys, his own pleasures and delights. In that land there are no lakes, no lotus ponds, nor streams. But in his dreams he creates his own lakes, his own lotus ponds and streams. For the spirit of man is the creator. Leaving his nest below in charge of the breath of life, the immortal spirit soars afar from his nest. He moves in all regions, wherever he loves, the spirit of golden radiance, the wandering swan everlasting. And in the region of dreams, wandering above and below, the spirit makes for himself innumerable subtle creations. Sometimes he seems to rejoice in the love of fairy beauties. Sometimes he laughs or beholds awe-inspiring terrible visions. People see his field of pleasure, but he can never be seen. What they mean is they can see him lying there sleeping, right? But what he's experiencing you can never see. The third condition is the sleeping life of silent consciousness, when a person has no desires and beholds nothing in dreams. The condition of deep dreamless sleep is of oneness, a mass of silent consciousness made of peace and enjoying peace. The silent consciousness is all-powerful, all-knowing, the inner ruler, the source of all, the beginning and end of all being. This third stage of awareness becomes an even clearer finger pointing at the moon. It gives us a closer analog to what it would be like to wake up into Brahman. And it's interesting to think why that is. Because in dreamless sleep, dualism begins to vanish. There's no beholding subject beholding an object, right? Instead, there's the closest approach we'll ever get to pure objectless knowing subject. Just the one without a second. A real kind of bliss we all sort of remember when we wake up. We all think there's nothing better than dreamless sleep. But it's not yet ultimate reality, because there is oneness, right? There's oneness, right? It's sort of like this, it says this mass of blissful, peaceful consciousness that looking back on when you wake up, you're aware of. And so there's still a dualism. And so it's still a finger pointing at the moon, right? Deep, dreamless sleep is the clearest metaphor for what we're getting at. Non-dualism, the subject without an object. Look with me in the Upanishads on page 135. But even as a falcon or an eagle, after soaring in the sky, folds his wings because he is weary and flies down to his nest, even so the spirit of man hastens to that place of rest where the soul has no desires, and the spirit sees no dreams. What was seen in a dream? All the fears of waking, such as being slain or oppressed, pursued by an elephant, or falling into an abyss, is seen to be a delusion. But when, like a king or god, the spirit feels, I am all, then he is in the highest world. It is the world of the spirit, where there are no desires. All evil has vanished, and there is no fear. As a man in the arms of a beloved feels only peace all around him, even so the soul, in the embrace of Atman, the spirit of vision, feels only peace all around. All desires are attained, since the spirit that is all has been attained. So no desires are there, and there is no sorrow. There a father is a father no more, nor is a mother there a mother. The worlds are no longer worlds, nor are the gods gods any longer. There the Vedas disappear, and a thief is not a thief, nor is a slayer a slayer. The outcast is not an outcast, nor the baseborn a baseborn. The pilgrim is not a pilgrim, and the hermit is not a hermit, because the spirit of man has crossed the lands of good and evil, and passed beyond the sorrows of the heart. There the spirit sees not, but though seeing not, he sees. How could the spirit not see if he is the all? But there is no duality there, nothing apart from him to see. Remember when we read this before in another lecture? It goes on to say, then the spirit tastes not, yet tasting not he tastes. How could he not taste if he is the all? But there is no duality there, nothing apart from him to taste. Speaking, hearing, thinking, touching, knowing, right? For only where there seems to be a duality, there one sees another, one feels another, one tastes another, one speaks to another, one listens to another, one touches another, one knows another. But in the ocean of spirit, the seer is alone, beholding his own immensity. You become the one without a second. You are the subject without an object. So dreamless sleep was the last and ironically higher stage of illusion. But the text says, the fourth condition is Atman in his own pure state, the awakened life of supreme consciousness. It is neither outer nor inner consciousness, neither semi-consciousness nor sleeping consciousness, neither consciousness nor unconsciousness. He is Atman, the spirit himself, that cannot be seen or touched, that is above all distinction, beyond thought, and ineffable. And the union with him is the supreme proof of his reality. He is the end of evolution and non-duality. He is peace and love. So again, deep sleep, or dreamless sleep, was the final illusion. Because when we remember dreamless sleep, it's still a sort of object to us, a sort of a sense of a huge homogeneous mass of peaceful bliss. But even this is obliterated in the fourth state of awareness, where we do not know Brahman, but we become Brahman, the one without a second, a state of absolute wakefulness that moves through the other three conditions and can play with them at will. Each state of awareness melted into the other as knowledge grows. But all four together make up the four-footed or four-squared existence of the self. And though the lower levels are transcended, yet they still remain, precisely in that sense of supersession or aufhebung we talked about before in an earlier lecture. So this self-transformation passes us through levels of self-awareness which equal levels of reality. And they say it becomes something totally under the control of the practitioner of jnana yoga, the yoga of awareness knowledge. The philosopher, it is claimed, can make these earlier three states come and go, appear and disappear at will, no longer exposed and helpless in the forceful dream of normal everyday waking life. She enters it only when she wishes to, as the fourth has become the philosopher's home. Yogic philosophical practice then makes this fourth state the bedrock of life, and all other states of awareness are evaluated and reinterpreted from that point of view. And everyday waking consciousness only becomes one of many options. And now we come to another finger pointing at the moon. The word Om. Right? So the text states, this Atman is the eternal word Om. Its three sounds, Ah, U, are the first three states of consciousness, and these three states are the three sounds. The first sound, Ah, is the first state of waking consciousness, common to all men. It is found in the words Apti, obtaining, and Adamatvam, being first. Who knows this attains in truth all his desires, and in all things becomes first. The second sound, U, is the second state of dreaming consciousness. It's found in the words Utkarsha, uprising, and Ubayadavam, bothness. Who knows this raises the tradition of knowledge and attains equilibrium. The third sound, is the third state of sleeping consciousness, where you dream, right? I mean, where you have deep sleep, not dream. Excuse me. Is the state of sleeping consciousness, dreamless sleep. It's found in the words miti, measure, and in the root mi, to end, that gives us apiti, final end. Who knows this measures all with his mind and attains the final end. The word Om, as one sound, is the fourth state of supreme consciousness. It is beyond the senses, and is the end of evolution. It is non-duality in love. He goes with his self to the supreme self. Who knows this? Who knows this? Now the word Om, obviously, if you're familiar with the word, is a mantra, which is a kind of chant you do to help you meditate. And in chanting the word Om, you're essentially continually looking at a finger pointing at the moon until you finally look where the finger's pointing, and then you go there. Or you just wake up. There's nowhere to go. Now, it's cool how they use the sort of the way sounds occur to help you understand what they're talking about as a sort of aid to meditate and to think about it, right? It's kind of funny, but if you study, say you study the Sanskrit language in the classical manner, you have to learn the philosophy along with the Sanskrit to fully have the correct experience of learning the language in the classical sense. So, if you think about Om, it arises out of the movement from the primal sound of Ah. Just say Ah, and that's at the back of your open throat. Ah. At the back of the open mouth is the Ah. And it was thought to include and be included in every other sound in the alphabet. Ah is the first, and it moves toward the closure of See how your lips close? With the oo in between, right? It sort of moves from your throat to this part of your mouth to the closure of your lips. Ah, oo. Ah, oo. Ah, oo becomes O when you say it very fast. Ah, oo, aum. Aum. It's really A-U-M, see, but it's the two words glide together. Aum. Like that. Okay? And all together, the sounds give us the sound Om, which is a finger pointing at the moon of the fourth. So the Ah sound relates to waking, the Oo sound relates to dreaming, the sound relates to deep dreamless sleep, and all together, Aum give us Om, the finger pointing at the moon of Atman realization. And Om rests in silence. It arises in silence and goes back into it, because waking, dreaming, and deep sleep could not arise without the silence of ultimate consciousness. Look with me on page 102. There are two ways of contemplation of Brahman, in sound and in silence. By sound, we go to silence. The sound of Brahman is Om. With Om, we go to the end, the silence of Brahman. The end is immortality, union, and peace. Even as a spider reaches the liberty of space by means of its own thread, the man of contemplation by means of Om reaches freedom. It's cool. They're talking about those spiders that spin like little parachute webs and they go floating off into the sky, if you know about them. Okay. Now, the sound of Brahman is Om. At the end of Om, there is silence. It is a silence of joy. It is the end of the journey where fear and sorrow are no more. Steady, motionless, never falling, everlasting, immortal. It is called the omnipresent Vishnu. In order to reach the highest, consider in adoration the sound and silence of Brahman. For it has been said, Brahman is sound and silence. His name is Om. Attain therefore contemplation. Contemplation in silence on him. Om arises from silence and passes back into it. Just listen for a second. Om. 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 This is the sound Om. Appears, grows, transforms, and vanishes into silence. And the silence is as real as the sounds. Because if there were no silences, if there were no pauses, there would be no words to hear. And so too with the four conditions of reality. They are all transformations of one existence, which taken up together make up the whole, and represent the actual creation, existence, and destruction of the universe of everyday life. But you actually experience daily, as you go to sleep, then dream, then enter dreamless sleep, then wake up into samsara once more to dance with Maya. But tattvamasi, you are that. Can you recognize yourself in the word Om or not? Thank you for your kind attention. I've been very happy to study the Upanishads with you. Next, we'll start to think about Taoism, but that's for another video. Thank you for your kind attention.